Hello, everyone. We are going to have a webinar today, the last of the series of the webinars within our project Erasmus+. This webinar is titled Formative Assessment in CLIL, Examples of Assessment Sheets Supporting CLIL Lessons, because we are going to talk a little bit about theory, as well as show you good practices that we have worked out during our international cooperation. The Erasmus Plus project titled Bilingual Education a Step Ahead was a cooperation between 14 partners, and my language school was one of them. My name is Julia Budzowska, and I'm an English teacher and the owner of a private language school from Poland called Rainbow English. We try to implement the CLIL methodology, and we have been working with it for 3 years. So I think that we have some good practice to share, and I really hope you will enjoy this meeting. At the end, I will show you the contact details. So if you had any questions, write to me, and I will do my best to answer as fully as it's possible. So let's begin. CLIL and the role of the assessment. Whenever you come across any introductions to CLIL, you can see that it concerns not only the content or the language teaching, but also other things like culture and citizenship. And from my point of view, citizenship is best realized through cooperation and assessment. We try to introduce children to the 21st century competencies to enhance their skills in this area. This is something that traditional school often forgets, and assessment is a vital part of the new reality. We try to move from traditional assessment that was teacher-pupil oriented towards more self-assessment, peer assessment, and group assessment of students. Traditional assessment, that is usually called the summative one, is something that we know from our experience as we were students. Is exactly this situation when you come to school, you are given a test that then is checked by the teacher, and what you get is a grade. It can be anything, depending on the school system. In Poland, you get 1 if you fail, and you get 6 if everything is perfect. Usually you get something about 5, which is top. You have to be really, really good to get 6, but in fact, nobody really knows if you get 3 or 2, what was it for. You really rarely get the criteria of success before. So the teachers just say that next week you are going to take a test of the material that you have been doing, and that's all. So teachers only indicate mistakes. They do not explain what was wrong and give no clues how to correct it. They just say you have to come and take the test again next week. That can really, as you may remember, demotivate students, because when you get 1 or when you get F, you know that you failed, but you don't know how to start, how to take it again so that to succeed. And just a grade itself is usually unclear and therefore destroys communication, because students may get offended. They feel that the teacher wasn't just, that the grade was not the right one, that they did their best, which actually may be true, and they simply weren't understood, and that's the whole thing about. So the scientists have started analyzing the whole process, how to improve the whole communication in this very, we have to say, sensitive area, because someone is critical towards our work. and how to keep students motivated even if they fail. And what they have come across is something that we call formative assessment or assessment for learning, just to emphasize that it is something that should help you learn rather than demotivate you. And we may say that but this assessment starts even before you start teaching, um, because this is the whole process. You have here what you can see in the screen. You have a few steps that you have to take, like aims of the lesson, which you have to present to your students, criteria of success, work with parents, successful methods of asking key questions, giving feedback, peer-to-peer assessment, and self-assessment. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these steps so that you could understand what the process is about. Aims of the lesson. Before you enter the classroom and you, as a teacher, want to give a lesson, you have to ask yourself a very important question. What am I going to teach them? Is it going just to be something that is from the curriculum, or is it going to be something more well thought, like why do you want to teach them? In what way is it practical? Do you want to teach them just because it is in the curriculum, or do you really think that it can be necessary in their life? Quite a risky question, because you will probably discover that some of the contents are maybe impractical. But then another question would be, so what can I do to make it interesting for the brains? Because you have to remember that when the brain finds something totally impractical, it will not learn it. So you have to start from the other side. You have to think how to change theory into practice. How will they use this knowledge in real life? At the end of the lesson, you have to make sure, or at the very beginning, depending what topic, what level you are, what stage, you have to make sure whether all students understand the aims of the lesson. After the lesson, you may ask them, can you please finish the sentence? Today, I have learned that. So you will have a quick feedback on what they have actually understood from the lesson. And you may discover that, which is also something very natural, every student learned something different, because there is another truth about their brains, that the brain cannot learn something new for the second time. So every time you learn something, it must be your first time, right? Afterwards, it isn't new. And then criteria of success. when you when you introduce the whole topic, and then you tell your students that now you are going to assess how well they understood it, to see if something needs repetition, not to punish them for not learning, of course, uh, you have to present the criteria of success. And it is a good idea to do it before the lesson, before the test, and while giving homework. You should discuss with your students what they will have to know practically to prove understanding the topic. So simple, you give tasks that check criteria. You cannot say like, write a letter, because write a letter is not a criteria of success. The criteria of success would be write a letter to a friend, telling him or her what you did yesterday. Try to use past simple and past continuous. And the result would be that your students will feel safe, encouraged, and motivated, because they know that whenever they write a letter that would fulfill these criteria, they may be successful. And when you get all the letters and you take them home, and of course, the easiest thing would be to give them the grade, but that would be traditional feedback. In assessment for learning, we have to spend more time analyzing students' work, and we have to give them feedback that would be very informative. So we usually give it in a form of a written or oral comment to the students' work. And the thing is that we shouldn't mix the comment with a grade, because students are used to getting grades and they will rarely read the comment. So it wouldn't make sense, because they would concentrate just on a grade, and there will be no positive influence of all your hard work. And there are four elements that we should include into the feedback. We should not only point out the mistakes, we should concentrate on highlighting what was good. Nowadays, we have such a fashion, I would say, among teachers, and I really hope it is not going to be just a fashion it's just going to be a trend. But the progressive teachers start using green pen just to underline or highlight all good sentences, and it really, of course, it doubles our work. Uh, but I think it is profitable and beneficial when we underline good, proper, and correct sentences. And we could describe what has to be improved. Don't write what was written in a bad way. Just say what should be improved. This is the same thing, but in a different way, in a more positive way, presented to your teacher, to your student. And of course, it sounds better. Indicate how it can be corrected, because students will know what was wrong, but they wouldn't know where to start. And if you were given an example of a very good work, instead of just giving A or B, why don't you propose further ways of development? Because the student may be magnificent, very skilled, and maybe they would love to practice more. So you could indicate like a website or where they could read more information on this topic that they might find interesting. Another area that we have to concentrate on is also work with parents, because as I said at the very beginning, we are all ex-students and we come from traditional schools and we were assessed in a summative way, and this is it, and it also concerns the parents. And there is only one way we can overcome this difficulty. We should stay close, we should talk and comment and share. We should make them believe, maybe through a workshop or personal talks, that it really matters if they ask questions. What have you learned today? Not what did you get? Because asking about grades, it's asking about something like achievements. And in fact, the process of learning itself, it's a challenge for a child, and it should be rewarded that you are really interested in what was the topic of the lesson, not what was the top of the cake, which is the grade sometimes. And now let's move to the lesson. Also, the lesson can look in a different way. In a traditional school, we have like this, that students sit in their chairs, and you ask a question. There is very little time for thinking for students. There are some volunteers who raise their hands. You give them a chance to answer your question. They are usually teachers' pets, and you give them good marks, and the rest of the students stays uninterested until the test. What I did and what I do whenever I enter the classroom is that I tell them that raising the hands will be very limited. They have to prepare popsicle sticks, as you can see in this photo, with their names that I collect. And whenever we check homework or I have some questions, I pick up one person, and this person must answer my question. The idea is first you ask questions, then you give them some time to think, then you pick up the person. And what happens if the person doesn't know the answer? No comment on yes, okay, sorry, you don't know the answer or something like that. I just pick up another person. I don't kill the creativity. I don't punish them for wrong ideas. There are no wrong ideas. Sometimes you may know something, but not precisely, and there's nothing wrong about it. You come to school to learn, not to show off. So then we go to another person. The biggest problem with this technique is among, we call them teachers' pets. The students who are used to being active during the whole lesson and being asked to answer your questions, they find it really awkward that they cannot answer it, and they are quite reluctant, and you have to talk to them. You have to give them a chance to answer whenever they want in some parts of the lessons. I think that would be the win-win situation. And now we move to our good practices in terms of the worksheets. When you have lesson plans, you usually there are no formative assessment worksheets. We attached about 40 of them to a website that is a part of our project. Here I will show you just a few examples of them. I divided them into categories. The first category is peer-to-peer assessment. It makes students responsible for learning process. It teaches them to assess objectively. You don't need to like each other, but you have to stay objective while assessing. It prepares them for adult cooperation in work environment because, as you know, you also have to work with different people. You don't have to see eye to eye, but you have to do some projects. And these are the worksheets that we give them at the end of the lesson. This concerns the art lesson. Here you had to write in a positive way what I liked in your work, then also positive what I would do differently, suggestions. You accept the other person's ideas, but also you want to present yours, and then names of artist and critic. Another one, this time from science lessons. You ask one student to draw a plant, and then you label its parts. Then you swap the sheet with your neighbor, and the neighbor has to assess what was drawn, if there are all parts, if they are labeled, and if the work is neat and clear. Another category is self-assessment. It makes students responsible for learning process and more self-confident. It teaches them to assess objectively their skills and progress, which adults sometimes cannot do properly. And it also increases motivation and understanding of tasks. And the examples. Here, another science lesson about arthropods. It's a very nice idea, 3 to 1, like 3 new facts I have learned, 2 great thoughts that popped into my head. So still I haven't got the answer. And one big question I still have. Right, okay, so 2 great thoughts that I have and one big question I still have. That would be a perfect beginning for the next lesson. Or a kind of a project to do at home. Maths. Um, the magic words of fractions, my learning scale after the lesson, and you have to mark the level which you think is your level after the lesson, how much you understood. I do not understand, I understand some, but still I have questions, I understand and I can do it by myself, or understand and I can help a friend. That would be the mastery, right? And something that I really like, this is the work of one of my teachers, the exit sleep. It was about bugs. The topic I learned, things I learned today, things I found interesting, and the question I still have. So it's also a good idea to collect questions for the next lesson. And now the summary. We have to understand that there are 2 ways of assessment. The formative does not exclude summative. We use both. And I have prepared here examples of when each of them is advisable. I would use formative assessment during the whole process to help the student correct their knowledge. So before taking a big test, like a kind of a mock exam, to improve teaching quality, because I get lots of feedback, which I find really beneficial for my work, and to enhance interesting motivation, which is the key to success. The summative assessment we use to summarize a part of material when we are pretty sure that all of our students acknowledged everything, and to fulfill requirements of curriculum, because this is what systems want us to do, to compare students' results because it is measurable, and to enhance extrinsic motivation, which is a part of our social life. And at this moment, I'd like to thank you for your attention. And if you still have any questions, you can always email me at clilmaniacs@gmail.com. And I would like to invite you to our website, www.bclil.eu, where you can find all our lesson plans, and also the worksheets that I have presented today. They are on the license of Creative Commons, so you can make use of them whenever you want. You can change them and they are free of charge. So thank you for listening, and I also invite you to watch our other webinars. There are There are 4 webinars altogether. All of them concern CLIL and its introduction into preschool and primary school practice. Thank you very much.
You are the last party in the conference. Call recording is off.